space was quiet. Too quiet. Commander Sarah Whitaker stood on the wide observation deck of the USS Resolute, her reflection ghosting against the glass. Her hands were clasped tightly behind her back, knuckles pale from the pressure. Out beyond the reinforced viewport, Franklin's Hope, the colony she had last visited 6 months ago, where children had played under the shade domes and merchants had filled the marketplace with laughter, was gone. Not gone in the way settlements sometimes faded, abandoned to dust when trade routes shifted. Gone as in erased. The entire planet below was a smoldering wound. Cities had been reduced to craters glowing with molten glass. Colony shuttles were nothing but shredded metal tumbling through orbit, some still burning as they entered the atmosphere. The blackened remains of the orbital habitat Franklin's Reach spun slowly, its once proud solar arrays snapped like the limbs of a broken insect. The stars were beautiful tonight, but Sarah couldn't bear to look at them. Not after this. A quiet chime behind her broke the silence. "Commander," Lieutenant Aaron Vale said, stepping forward. His voice was steady, but there was a hollow weight behind it. "Recovery teams have finished sweeping the debris field. Final casualty count is in." Sarah didn't turn right away. Her gaze remained locked on the planet's scarred surface. "Say it," she said finally, her voice calm, too calm. 58,000 confirmed dead, Vale said softly. Most were killed in the opening bombardment. "We found some escape pods hidden in the outer belt, but," his throat tightened. "Commander, the survival rate is under 3%. Sarah closed her eyes. 3%. She imagined the faces of the colonists she had met, the kids who had lined up for a photo with her on Founders Day, the old farmer who had given her fresh coffee beans from the first harvest. All gone. Her jaw tensed, and she finally turned to face Vale. "Any word from Earth, Command?" Vale hesitated, then nodded toward the comms station. "Incoming priority transmission. President's seal." Sarah strode across the bridge, every step heavy with restrained fury, and accepted the call. General Marcus Hargrove appeared on the holoscreen, his uniform immaculate, his face carved from stone. Behind him, the Security Council chamber was a blur of motion, advisors shouting into headsets, aides passing reports, the air thick with tension. "Commander Whitaker," Hargrove said. "You've seen the situation." "I've seen it," Sarah replied, her voice hard. "And I want to know who did it." "The attackers have been identified as the Valari Dominion," Hargrove said grimly. "No warning, no demands. They entered the system with a fleet of 60 ships, obliterated the colony's defenses in under 10 minutes, and commenced orbital fire until the planet was uninhabitable. Our long-range probes confirmed their fleet jumped out system immediately after." Sarah's hands curled into fists. This was an extermination strike. "Yes," Hargrove said. His tone sharpened. "And the United Earth government has unanimously voted for a military response. The President has signed Directive Black Sunday retaliation is authorized, total, decisive retaliation." For a moment, Sarah just stared at him, processing the weight of those words. Directive Black Sun had never been enacted in Earth's history. It was the Doomsday Clause, the authorization to bring every available fleet to bear against an enemy until they could no longer threaten human life anywhere in the galaxy. "General," Sarah said carefully, "we're not just talking about a counterstrike. We're talking about obliterating an entire battle group, maybe their whole sector fleet." Hargrove's expression did not change. "We're talking about making the Valari understand that if they touch humanity again, the cost will be more than they are willing to pay." Sarah felt something cold and dark settle in her chest. She had spent her entire career believing in diplomacy, in the possibility of coexistence. But Franklin's Hope was still burning below them. "Then give me the fleet," she said. Hargrove didn't hesitate. "You'll have it. The 3rd and 5th Expeditionary Fleets are mobilizing. Task Force Sigma will rendezvous with you within 72 hours. You are hereby appointed overall commander of the strike force. Your orders are to take the fight to the Valari and make sure they will never dare to repeat this." Sarah nodded once. "Understood." "Good hunting, Commander," Hargrove said. The transmission cut out. The bridge of the Resolute was silent for several seconds. Then Aaron Vale broke the stillness. "So, this is it," he said quietly. "We're really doing this." Sarah turned back toward the viewport, the reflection of the burning planet filling her eyes. "They wanted a war," she said. "Now they have one." Her voice carried through the bridge, low but hard as forged steel. Every officer straightened. Every crew member felt the same thing Sarah did, the fire of grief turning to something far sharper. Determination. Vengeance. Sarah walked to the command chair and sat, her posture radiating authority. "Signal all ships. Prepare for mobilization. Notify our fighter wings that they're going to war. And get me a secure channel, we'll brief every captain in the task force. I want plans on the table in the next 6 hours." "Yes, ma'am," Vale said, already moving. Out beyond the glass, Franklin's hope continued to smolder, but the stars suddenly felt a little less cold. Far away, in the heart of the Valari Dominion, Admiral Troll of the Imperial Fleet received word of the human mobilization. He sat back in his war throne, letting the news ripple through the command chamber. Around him, Valari officers clicked their mandibles and hissed in amusement. "So," Troll rumbled, his deep voice echoing through the hall, "the humans think themselves warriors now. They rally their fleets, thinking they can strike at the Dominion?" Laughter rolled through the chamber. "Let them come," Troll said, baring his fangs in a grin. "We destroyed one of their colonies without effort. We will destroy their fleets just as easily." But even as he said it, a sliver of unease coiled in the back of his mind. He had seen human tenacity before. He had underestimated them once. And if the reports were true, humanity was gathering a fleet larger than anything they had deployed in a century. For the first time, a question nagged at him unspoken, unwelcome. What if they were no longer prey? Space shuddered as the human fleet tore across the void. Over 300 ships, destroyers, cruisers, carriers, dreadnoughts moved in perfect formation, their drives blazing like a trail of fire. The USS Resolute led them, her prow pointed like a spear at the heart of the Valari Dominion. On the bridge, Commander Sarah Whitaker stood in the center of the command pit, her boots planted, her face illuminated by the glow of tactical holograms. Around her, officers called out status reports in sharp, clipped voices, the air tense with expectation. "Fleet status?" Sarah asked, her voice cutting through the noise. "All task groups report ready," Lieutenant Aaron Vale said from the tactical station. "Weapons primed, shields charged. Fighter wings have launched and are holding formation. Black Sun protocol is green across the board." Sarah nodded. She turned, her eyes sweeping the bridge crew, men and women who had watched Franklin's hope burn, who had volunteered for this strike knowing exactly what it meant. "This is not just another operation," she said, her voice calm but carrying. "Franklin's hope was wiped from existence. Today, we answer for every man, woman, and child they slaughtered. Today, we remind the Valari that humanity is not prey. Today, the black sun rises." No one cheered. There was no roar of approval. Only grim nods and the tightening of jaws. This wasn't a moment for celebration. It was the calm before the storm. "Helm," Sarah said. "Take us in." The first target was a Valari staging outpost hidden on the edge of the Pyrrhus Nebula, a fortified stronghold from which Dominion fleets patrolled the border systems. As the human fleet approached, the nebula boiled around them, a vast storm of crimson and gold gas clouds. The outpost came into view, a lattice of shield platforms and gun batteries surrounding a central command hub, all bristling with weapons. "Enemy forces detected," Vale reported. "Perimeter defenses online. Reading 15 destroyers, 5 cruisers, and 1 heavy carrier. They're scrambling to intercept." Sarah studied the tactical map. "Perfect." She straightened, her voice hard as iron. "All batteries, fire." The void erupted. Railgun slugs, each the size of a city bus, streaked from human dreadnoughts, tearing through the first line of shield satellites. Plasma torpedoes followed, leaving trails of blue fire before detonating against Valari hulls. The Valari responded instantly. Energy beams lashed out from their platforms, raking the human formation. The Resolute shuddered as its shields flared bright white. Forward shields holding at 87%. Vale shouted over the thunder of the impacts. Hold formation. Sarah barked. Focus fire on the shield generator clusters. Wave after wave of fire poured from the fleet. One by one, the Valari's defensive nodes collapsed. When the last generator blew apart in a sphere of flame, Sarah gave the order. Full assault. Break their line. Human destroyers surged ahead, weaving between Valari fire as they unleashed missile storms. Fighters dove into the fray, swarming the enemy carrier and hammering its flight decks until they were nothing but debris. Inside the Valari command hub, Governor Kalsu staggered as another blast rocked the station. Shields are down, and aide shrieked. Then power them back up. Kalsu snapped. They're not coming back online, Governor, their weapons are overloading the capacitors. Kalsu turned to the viewport just in time to see the human dreadnought Leviathan fire its spinal cannon. The beam cut through the outpost like a blade through paper. A heartbeat later, everything went white. When the light faded, the Valari outpost was gone, a cloud of drifting metal and gas. Target neutralized, Vale said, his voice almost reverent. Sarah didn't smile. Her jaw remained tight. Signal all ships. We move on the next objective. Set course for the Valari forward fleet. The human task force swept across Dominion territory like a storm. For the next 48 hours, they hit target after target, shipyards, supply depots, listening posts, leaving nothing but wreckage behind. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. No one had ever seen humanity fight like this before. Not with this kind of precision. Not with this kind of fury. Every strike was surgical, every withdrawal perfectly timed. It was as if the entire fleet shared one heartbeat, one mind, one purpose. By the time they reached the Valari Armada, the Dominion was no longer laughing. Admiral Troll stood aboard the flagship Krall's Dominion, his massive form framed by the towering windows of the command deck. Around him, the fleet's captains reported in each with their losses, each with growing unease. They have destroyed 6 outposts, Admiral, one captain said. Our supply lines in this sector are crippled. They are baiting us into a decisive battle, another warned. We should regroup, fall back to the core worlds. Troll's mandibles clicked in irritation. We are the Dominion. We do not run. He turned, his red eyes narrowing. Signal the fleet. Prepare for engagement. If the humans wish to meet us in open battle, then we will end this here. When the two fleets met, the battle shook the stars. From the bridge of the Resolute, Sarah watched the Valari formation fill the tactical display, more than 100 ships, bristling with weapons. Battle stations, she said. All groups, commence attack pattern Sigma. Human cruisers peeled off into flanking positions while carriers launched wave after wave of fighters. Valari ships answered with their own swarms, filling space with streaks of fire and missile trails. The first clash was brutal. A human destroyer was torn apart by concentrated plasma fire, but not before it crippled 2 enemy frigates. Fighters darted between the behemoths, strafing weak points, sowing chaos. On the bridge, the deck shook violently as a near miss rocked the Resolute. Shields at 63%. Vale reported. Redirect power from aft shields. Sarah ordered. Bring us around, I want every gun we have on their flagship. The Resolute rolled hard to port, bringing its heavy guns to bear. The rest of the task force followed, focusing fire on the massive Valari dreadnought at the center of their line. Bit by bit, the enemy flagship's shields flared, flickered, and failed. Direct hit. Their engines are going critical. Vale shouted. Finish it, Sarah said. The Resolute's main cannon fired, punching straight through the Valari dreadnought's hull. The flagship detonated in a sun-bright explosion that lit up the entire battlespace. For a moment, there was silence. Then the Valari fleet wavered. And the humans pressed their advantage. By the time the battle began to wind down, the stars were littered with burning wreckage. On the Krall's Dominion, Admiral Troll's claws dug into the railing as his tactical map turned red. "They're not stopping," he growled, almost in disbelief. "No," his first officer said grimly, watching the human formation tighten for another strike. "They won't stop until we're gone." And he was right. Silence fell over the stars. Where minutes ago there had been chaos, blinding flashes of plasma fire, the thunder of railgun slugs ripping through hulls, the shrieks of dying reactors, there was now only drifting wreckage. The last of the Valari warships burned, its hull cracking apart as its drive core finally failed. From the bridge of the USS Resolute, Commander Sarah Whitaker watched the carnage unfold. Her knuckles were white against the command chair. The tactical map glowed blood red with enemy losses. "Status of the enemy fleet?" she asked, her voice low. Lieutenant Aaron Vale turned from the tactical console, his face pale, almost disbelieving. "Confirmed, their armada is destroyed. What few ships survived are running dark, fleeing toward the core systems." Sarah's chest rose and fell once. Slowly. "Good," she said quietly. The bridge crew exchanged glances. There was no cheering yet, no applause. They had seen too much death today, their own and the enemy's, to celebrate. The Resolute itself bore fresh scars, plasma burns blackening its hull, sections vented to space, dozens of crew killed or injured. But they were alive. And Franklin's hope had been avenged. Sarah stood, her boots echoing on the deck plates as she approached the forward viewport. The graveyard of ships lay before them, Valari cruisers split open, human fighters drifting home, debris glittering like frozen fireflies. She didn't feel triumph. She felt something colder. "Open a secure channel to all surviving Valari ships," she ordered. Aaron hesitated. "To broadcast, what exactly?" Sarah didn't take her eyes off the viewport. "Our message." He nodded and tapped the controls. "Channel open." Sarah stepped closer to the comm pickup. When she spoke, her voice was like ice. "This is Commander Sarah Whitaker of the United Earth Fleet. Hear me well. You destroyed Franklin's hope. You slaughtered 60,000 of our people without warning, without mercy. Today, your armada lies in ruins. If you ever strike at humanity again, if you even think of threatening one more human world, know this: we will not stop at your fleets. We will not stop at your outposts. We will burn your foundries, your shipyards, your cities, your very homeworld, until your entire dominion is a memory whispered in fear. Remember Franklin's hope." Aaron sent the transmission. Across the stars, Valari survivors received the message. Some listened in silence. Some hissed with anger. Others felt a new sensation in their reptilian hearts, something uncomfortably close to fear. The next hours were spent in grim work. Human rescue craft combed the debris fields, pulling survivors, friend and foe alike, from shattered hulls. Even in vengeance, humanity did not slaughter needlessly. Wounded Valari were brought aboard medical ships under guard, their injuries treated. In the fleet briefing room, Sarah stood before the assembled captains, their holographic forms flickering around the table. "The Dominion has been dealt a decisive blow," she said. "Their armada is shattered. But we cannot assume the war is over. They will rebuild. They will seek revenge of their own. Our next step is consolidation. Secure our borders, reinforce our colonies, and send a message to every species watching this war: humanity does not break. We do not yield. And we do not forgive easily." The captains nodded one by one. They understood. When the briefing ended, Sarah returned to the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly before her, quiet now, deceptively peaceful. Aaron approached softly, his usual crispness muted by exhaustion. "Commander, the fleet reports ready for departure. Coordinates for Seoul are locked in." Sarah didn't answer immediately. Her gaze remained fixed on the distant nebula, where the last battle had begun. She could almost still hear the thunder of the guns, the voices of the dead crying out for justice. "Do you think this will be enough?" Aaron asked quietly. Sarah finally turned toward him. "Enough to make them hesitate," she said. "Enough to make them think twice before they ever touch one of our worlds again." Aaron nodded, but there was a shadow in his expression. And if they don't hesitate? Sarah's lips thinned into a hard line. Then we do this again. And again. Until the Dominion learns there are some lines you do not cross. Her voice was calm, but in her eyes burned the same fire that had guided her through every battle, the fire that had lit the Black Sun. Far across the galaxy, deep within Valari space, the High Council convened. Admiral Troll stood before them, his armor scorched, his mandibles tight with fury. You told us humans were weak, he snarled. You told us they were a fractured, bickering species, prey to be culled at will. Look at them now. The council chamber was silent. The loss of an entire sector fleet weighed heavy, even on the proud Dominion. The humans have declared war, Troll said. Not a border skirmish. Not a campaign. War. If we do not crush them now, we will never be rid of them. But none of the counselors spoke. They had seen the reports. They had seen the precision of the human strikes, the ferocity of their fleet actions, the annihilation of an armada that had once been the pride of the Dominion. The silence dragged on. For the first time in living memory, the Valari Dominion hesitated. Back aboard the Resolute, the fleet began its return journey. One by one, ships aligned for jump. Helm, Sarah said quietly. Set a course for home. Aye, Commander. Stars elongated into brilliant white lines as the fleet jumped. For a moment, the bridge was bathed in light, then the Resolute was gone, leaving behind only drifting debris and the memory of vengeance delivered. Sarah remained standing as the stars reformed outside the viewport. Somewhere, beyond the black gulf of space, Earth awaited their return, the one place she could finally stand before the families of Franklin's Hope and tell them the truth. It was done. But as she looked out into the infinite night, Sarah knew this was only the beginning. The Valari had woken something they could not put back to sleep. And the galaxy, now watching with wide, fearful eyes, would never forget the day humanity's vengeance blotted out the stars.